to Something for the Turbo, the new weekly podcast brought to you by Unfound, the global platform for the travel-loving cyclist.
Welcome to the Something for the Turbo podcast. Today we're supported by our friends Alp Cycles. Get in touch with them for all your alpine cycling experiences. A slightly different topic today. I'm delighted to be joined by physiotherapist and founder of Biomechanics, Dave Emsley. Dave is a renowned physiotherapist who has worked with a number of elite sports people, and we discuss cycling, of course, physiotherapy, different approaches to physiotherapy, body mechanics and how that relates to cyclists, various injuries, and also optimum body mechanics for cycling performance. We discuss this and a whole lot more, including posture, bike fit, some tests you can try at home yourself, yoga, pilates, cranial, foam rolling, massage guns, and lots more. It's a fascinating discussion and well worth listening to. And without further ado, let me bring you Dave. Dave, how are you? Thank you very much for joining us. You well?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. You've been surviving the lockdown. It must have been quite an interesting time for yourselves and your practice.
Yeah. To say the very least, we certainly had to change our approaches very, very quickly in order to survive. Basically, all of a sudden, you're not allowed to see people in clinic space, which is exactly what we love doing all day, every day. So we went technological, and I am a non-technological person. So we spent hours and hours and hours working out how to do it and what was the best way. Got our team to engage, and we've helped multiple people in the time that we couldn't see them face to face in a clinic room over computers, which was a change for us, but at the same time it was a help, and we were glad that we could do it. But it's very, very refreshing to be able to see people back into clinic space now, and it's really exciting to be able to put your hands onto people's bodies again and try and make them move better.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been surviving using all the PPE. That must have been a new experience for you. Hot, I imagine.
Exactly. It isn't. Having worked in the NHS, we've all had to wear PPE from time to time. But certainly the joy of the weather in lockdown has been, it's been so sunny and so nice that at least we all had a bit of vitamin D and a bit of endorphin release from the sunshine. But the negative is when you are wearing plastic, over your body, over your face, on your hands, etc. It does. it's not the most comfortable.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned just off air there, obviously, I haven't actually given you the full introduction like I normally would to the podcast, because I think your background is actually part of the story and why I was keen to get you on today. So I don't know, how should we kick this off? Do you want to sort of talk through how you ended up where you are today and your journey? How did you sort of move into the physiotherapy world?
I think a lot of physios followed a similar pathway to myself. I was a sporty child. I was given a squash racket broken in half when I was 3, thrown onto a squash court. I was same with a tennis racket. I played football. I played every sport you could possibly throw at me. Loved it. I then had growing pains, Osgood slatters, had to stop playing sport for 6 months. Went to see a physio, went to see the doc, went to see various people. Just rest it, give it time. So I did, but it's a very frustrating situation sitting on the sidelines when you're at county standard of playing a sport and you can't play and you watch everyone else getting better and better and better. So I think I had the inspiration then of saying, well, actually, if that's happened to me, I want to be able to help other people that have been in the same position. And in school, I loved sport. PE was my favorite thing, but human biology I was fascinated by. Loved learning about muscles, the body, how it all works. And so it was a natural progression for me to say, right, what area do I put this into? And it got towards the end of school. I will be honest that I wasn't the most academic of people. I'd much rather run around, play sport and have a good time.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Indeed. So I I didn't have at that time to get into a physiotherapy course. I think even it is still now, that basically it's A's, straight A's, if not 2 A's and a B at A level in order to get onto a course. And when I was got my predicted grades, I was predicted B's. So talked with the parents, talked with people around me. What's the best idea? And my parents were amazingly supportive and said, "What's your passion? What do you like doing?" And sport was always my passion. So a sports science degree was my choice. Off to university. Birmingham University, wonderful place. Sport and exercise science. I met a lot of amazing people, and there's 30,000 students go there.
Yeah.
And the sports ethos there was high, and the learning, and I think I prefer grown-up learning basically rather than being spoon-fed in school. I quite enjoyed finding it all out for myself.
Yeah.
Got to the end and I thought, okay, where does this leave me? I came away, had a break, snowboarded for months on end, went and played cricket in Australia for a bit, and sort of worked out where I wanted to go, and ended up thinking, well, actually, I've seen a physio. I know what it's about. That's my choice. So off I packed to Edinburgh for 2 years to do a master's in physiotherapy.
Very good. And how was it? How was that?
Yeah, as we've spoken previously before, it was a wonderful thing to do. Number one, Edinburgh, what an amazing city. Fantastic.
Yeah.
There were great people in my course. There were great tutors as well. But the way it was taught, or my learnings on the course, didn't marry to what I'd learned and got a grasp of in sports science. It was very much led by sort of a medical model, the GP practice model, which is looking at joints in isolation, and this is how you test this, and this is how you test that, and you isolate this by doing this, you isolate this by doing that. And that didn't marry with all of the functional anatomy and motor programming and sort of muscle memory, for want of a phrase, learnings that I'd had within sports science. So I was,
and also, would you say that's also from playing sport yourself, is right? You couldn't relate to it, obviously the sports science bit, but having grown up playing sports, playing different sports, and seeing physios, and being, when you're then learning physiotherapy in a very theoretical and sort of micro perspective, you're like, oh, hang on, that's not really what you're thinking as a sportsman.
exactly that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just finding that you look at it, and it gave me a great basis. So it gave me a great way of orthopedic testing joints. It gave me a great understanding of the way muscles interact. But it didn't really lead on to that feeling of, well, it's all very well knowing how they interact and where they all are. But when you want to do a movement in sport, what's the movement? I need to know how to break the movement down. Show me the movement. Let me feel it. Let us work through that movement and work out what's going wrong. And that's not the way when I was taught it was taught. I do believe things are changing now.
Yeah.
So I can't speak for the more modern physio coming out of university, but you're still taught in a way that is effectively driven by an orthopedic model, which is, I have a knee pain, right, show me your knee. What happens with your knee? Let me just check the joint above. Let me just check the joint below. But really, I'm going to focus on the knee. And you go, but that's not the way the body works. That the knee is just a part of a big chain that goes from top to bottom. So you can't just focus on that one area. And I think that was my frustration that I found in my learnings. And then going into the NHS, and then and that is still working within that manner. Over time, I was getting more and more frustrated, and I was just searching for avenues to give me more inspiration.
That's interesting. So I was going to ask you, when did you come across the integrated systems model? Was that while you were working as a physio within NHS? You were sort of seeking out different avenues or a more fulfillment from a career perspective in some regards?
Exactly that. So I was fortunate enough to work alongside a locum physio who ran a physio training company. And his physio training company, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And he asked for my help. So I would go along and help him set up courses, sit at the back, listen to the teachings, watch the teachings, serve teas and coffees. I'd be the skivvy in the background. But what a great way of dipping in and getting information in all these different areas. And various talkers I was inspired by, I was sitting there scratching my head thinking, I'm not sure what I would have learned if I'd have paid to come on this learning course. And having spoken to the guy who ran the company, and us having in-depth conversations about my frustrations and my thought processes around movement, function, etc., he said, "There's someone you've got to meet," and he introduced me to Diane Lee, Canadian physiotherapist, who just shared my passion, I guess, but had thought about it long before I did.
She pioneered the system, right? I mean, it was her that. So it's relatively new. Can you give us a bit of an overview in terms of her background and how she came about this, and how new this is, or relatively new this is?
So Diane, I'll be honest, I'm not totally sure when this became part of her brainchild, but certainly my learnings of it were 2009, 2010. And it wasn't long before that herself and a lady, which is LJ Lee, who was working with her, they devised this model. So they were looking at how the body was moving, and they were just inspiring each other to look at it in a different way, looking at a better way, looking at a different way, and a better way. And Diane would say that she was very much into manual therapy and how the joints move at a local level. And LJ was an ex-gymnast, ex-ice hockey player who looked at fluency of movement. And actually, by combining the two knowledges, you got to the stage where you were looking at fluency of movement, but broken down to the level of what's dysfunctional and what's causing the breakdown in that fluency of movement. So you look at the outcome of movement and you want it to be beautiful, and you can often see when things are going wrong. And you can see it in the cycling world where you see someone laboring on a bike, whereas when you see the great cyclists on the tour and you just watch this beautiful, piston-like movement that looks effortless.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
You go,
exactly.
why does that look effortless? And the answer is, part of it's training, but the other part of it is if your body's working in the right way, it becomes easier to hone that movement. But if you're constantly fighting the body and trying to train while fighting the body at the same time, that's when it looks labored and that's when it feels labored. And so with the integrated systems model, which is it's basically a functional assessment. It's show me your movement and what's going wrong with the movement and at what level is it going wrong and how can we try and change that for that particular movement. Then it made perfect sense to me that it's if someone comes into me and says it hurts when I lift my arm up, then I need to know what the whole body is doing when you're lifting your arm up.
Yeah.
I don't need to know. I can't
Just
assess
what's
it.
happening in the shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. The shoulder's part of the assessment, but it's not the mainstay unless you find damage, restriction, or something along those lines within the shoulder. Often you'll find it's the position of the neck or joints within the neck. It may be the upper body, the thorax being held in a poor position, which actually limits the mechanical advantages given to the shoulder, in which case you're not using levers in the right manner or rotational pivots in the right manner, which then over time leads to the fact that you have a movement dysfunction.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was going to say it's a little bit like that song you taught as a kid. The knee, all the joints are sort of everything's connected, right? But it's actually deeper than that. It's also the nervous system, and there's so many different things that can affect your overall body mechanics, be it stress or and numerous different things, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And we look at it so the way the system is taught is you look at the person in the center. So everybody is different. We all react in different ways to everything. So my pain is different to your pain.
Yeah.
My thoughts around success are different to your thoughts around success. So whoever comes into clinic, you have a conversation with them around what they want to achieve. Right? What is the problem? And over a period of time, you go on a journey and you explore the body's role in that problem and you explore the mind's role in that problem. So are you worried about something? Have you got a mental block about a movement? Do you want to achieve something, but you don't know how to do it?
So it could be that way. And so obviously everyone is different. You mentioned that. I mean, do some of the limitations people have start at birth? Are people more naturally flexible than other people, or is it a fact that they are mechanically better? What are the elements, and when does it start, or is it just the fact that every person is different?
That's a great question. So whenever I normally do a talk for people and they say, what's the perfect posture? My answer tends to be, show me a 2-year-old and I'll roughly show you the perfect posture unless there's been problems prior to being 2.
Okay,
after that, we learn processes, we learn positions, the body molds to the tasks it's been asked to do. So as we start to walk more, you learn how to strengthen and build strength into walking. As you learn, if you're always carrying a bag on one side, you learn to carry the bag on one side, and your body changes and physically adapts to all of the tasks you do over a period of time.
So it compensates.
Absolutely, and when you look at it, often the way that I would envisage the body is the fact that we compensate over a long period of time and add compensation on compensation on compensation on compensation, and it does tend to be that you get to your age, Jules, my age, and things start going a bit wrong. And you're like, why are they going wrong? I haven't actually injured myself. I'm just finding it harder to do something or painful to do something. And you would look at it possibly you've just started to run out of compensation.
Can't go on so much. And I suppose undoing it is a little bit like undoing a ball of string. It's not just about, it's about sort of weaving back to the beginning to find the original source.
Exactly that. And the interesting thing that often gets levied at us is, you're never going to get perfection. And we're never looking for perfection. So Jules, if you came in to see me and you were there saying, this is my problem, this is what I want to do, you only have to unroll that ball of string so far to allow you to use the compensations that you were using previously that allowed you to do the task. Yeah.
So it's understanding the individual, right? And I think for people listening, I mean, I have to say, I think I mentioned to you before, even in recent history, I've been to physios in Hong Kong that are very theoretical to the point of your original physiotherapy training, and I felt that they were trying to get me to the blackboard skeletal posture, which was so far away given all the injuries that someone who's played sport for their whole life has accrued, and all the sort of imbalances you get along the way. So that's frustrating that kind of physiotherapy is still out there, and I think sometimes that's why people struggle with new ideas, or maybe trying a different type of physiotherapy and embracing new ideas.
It's to look at the body as a whole. It does take a concept shift. It does take a shift in the mindset to think that a problem in the neck could manifest as an issue in the foot. But actually, when you break it down and you look at it mechanically, it makes perfect sense. And interestingly, when we see clients in clinic and then they come and they say, I have a knee problem. You're like, okay, just get undressed into your shorts and sports bra, or down towards underwear. They're looking at you thinking, why are you doing that? And you go, well, because I need to know what the whole body's doing. Oh, but other people haven't looked at that list. Well, you say, well, okay, well, that's hopefully where we're different, which is exciting. And then you start to go through things, and near enough to a person, they'll respond with, I had a thought about that. I thought something like that was happening. No one listens to it until you sort of sit and go, well, have you noticed that? I have noticed this is happening. I knew that was happening. I didn't
So
realize.
subconsciously people are aware of it, you think?
Yeah. And a lot of people who even aren't that body aware still have an awareness of the fact the body probably interlinks. And a lot of people come in and say, I've got a knee pain in my right knee. And I'll say, what else has happened? Oh, I've hurt my shoulder previously, but that's not important.
Yeah.
And you go, okay.
Yeah.
Why is that not important? Well, I've been told it makes no effect on it. Yeah, okay. But if your shoulder injury has made you adopt a posture with a twist or with excess weight or a weight shift, that would affect it. And they go, and as you talk, they start going, I did think that. I did think it, but I didn't want to sound silly.
Yeah.
So the first thing you have to break down in the clinic room is that feeling of look, there's no silly questions, right? Every question is a valid question. Every thought process is a valid thought process. If you think that your broken big toe has an effect on your migraine, there's a great possibility it does. You never know.
Well, that's it. And you know your body better than anyone. So don't worry about, feeling stupid about connecting things. You might well be right.
One of the best things I was taught along those lines is the fact that you never know how someone else feels about something, right? You can imagine how you might feel given that situation, but you don't know how the other person feels. You don't know how the other person's responding. So when people talk about their body and they're not being listened to, that's genuinely unfair. In fact, you'd go as far as to say it's outrageous. Yeah, if you came in and you said, this is what I feel, who am I to question what you feel? It's your body. You know it a whole lot better than me.
Yeah, interesting. That's interesting. It's not always the case, I don't think. So obviously, you've got a lot of experience in golf and those kind of sort of repetitive movements like cycling and golf, and I suppose rowing and running, and that lends to the system incredibly well, doesn't it? Or identifying issues with the system very well, doesn't it?
Yeah. So from our perspective, I suppose it simplifies things to a degree, because you're doing it, as I say, the system that we use is a movement system. So how are you moving and what breaks down when you're moving? So if you're doing a repetitive movement that's causing a breakdown, you can show me that repetitive movement. I can put you on a bike. I can look at how you're moving into a position to get onto the bike. And that gives me a great idea of what your body's doing. And then it's a question of finding out, do you know, as the client, that your body's doing that? Because if you don't know it's doing something mischievous, then you can't change it. But the repetitive movement is, if your body adapts so quickly to small compensations that you often don't know that you twist when you squat. You often don't know that when you're cycling, you're not square to the handlebars. You don't know that when you're playing golf, there's not as much weight on your right foot as your left foot, or your weight bearing on the outside of the foot, because you're doing a repeated movement so many times that your body is just adapted seamlessly, so you don't know it's happening.
So it's incredibly clever at sort of adapting, which is part of the problem, I suppose.
Absolutely. And you then look at, say, I call it combative sports, rugby, football, contact sports, where you're in an unknown environment, and
Yeah,
that's certainly where if you're having a repetitive injury, it's the system we would work within, the reasoning model that we work within is fantastic. If the model they tend to use around contact sports is building strength into unpredictability. And that works for a lot of people, but it doesn't work once you keep having the same injury. Because
same
if
thing,
you're
so
having
it's slightly different. Yeah.
if you're having the same injury and you're just trying to strengthen it more and more and more and more, that becomes Einstein's definition of madness, of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we come on to cycling now, and obviously we'll move later on to people that may be experiencing discomfort, and we can maybe talk about how they can either come and see yourselves or identify good physios they should be working with. But let's talk about just cyclists generally. And I know you've had a chance to listen to Dougie Shaw's podcast on the bike fit piece as well. But just let's start off the bike. What should cyclists be thinking about in terms of their own body mechanics, in terms of their movement, any tightnesses that they have, or what are the typical things that you see that cyclists struggle with? You made me laugh when you mentioned that one of the biggest things you see for all people sort of putting their back out is reaching down to the dishwasher to pull something out. But what are the typical things you see that cyclists struggle with on a weekly basis?
So, cyclists that you see, and it's a terrible thing about being a physio, or my thought process in physio is that I
Yeah,
drive around, walk around, cycle around, and I'm forever watching people and what they're doing and thinking,
yeah,
it's interesting. Why are you
yeah.
doing that?
Occupational hazard, right? I bet you. Yeah,
Absolutely,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you look at the way people are riding bikes, and you look at the expense of bikes and how, wow, the amount of money you can spend on the most amazing bikes. This is what I loved about the podcast was, fitting the bike to the person to the bike. What's the best setup for that person's body? Not just,
yeah,
cool, look at that bike, it's £5,000. Wow, that must be good. I'll buy that one.
yeah,
And what you see is two typical things I'll see will be one knee moving in and out when you're cycling. Yeah, so
yes, yeah,
towards a crossbar, away from the crossbar, towards a crossbar, away from the crossbar,
yeah,
or reaching over the handlebars and effectively
yeah,
leaning the shoulders forwards.
yeah.
And when you look at those two things happening, you go, oh, okay, interesting. I wonder if that's a comfortable cycling position for you. And I
Yes.
wonder how far you can cycle before breakdown.
Yeah, before and that was, I mean, Dougie was very interesting in the respect that he mentioned that he's obviously come from originally the same background as you, the sports science background, before moving into fitting, but he could only take athletes so far from a fit perspective, and would often consult with a physiotherapist in terms of any particular nuances there. But so obviously bike fit is important, and then working with the physio is almost separate in that regard, isn't it? It's kind of like you can only optimize your position on the bike, but then you need to be thinking about your movement beyond that as well, right?
Exactly that. So I guess I'm going to generalize bike fit, because otherwise this is a slightly unfair thought process around it, but you'll understand what I'm talking about
Yeah,
as we go through. I've seen a lot of people who have had what you would term the standard bike fit. And
yeah,
the standard bike fit is, right, where's your saddle going to be? Do you need where are your feet going to be on the pedals? Do I need to wedge anything in the shoes?
yeah,
And what the fit is doing is it's accommodating the body position.
yeah,
Now, if the body position is poor and you accommodate it, you allow the body position to get worse. Whereas if you're going in a sort of bike fit that is a journey, a repetitive bike fit of what happens to your body if we change that, go cycle, see what it feels like. Do we need to tinker with it? Do we need to change it further?
yes.
Then you're looking at, well, actually, how much do we need to accommodate of the body, but how much do we want the body to move better so you don't have to accommodate it? And it's
So it's that process, isn't it? And going back to what you've told us about the integrated systems model, if you just want the bike fitter to make you perfect in one go, which obviously Dougie said is
yeah,
not the way to go, and is what you're saying is not the way to go.
yeah,
You may be getting them to address a right knee issue, but as we've just learned about the integrated systems model, that right knee issue might be being caused by the left shoulder. So you're not really you're sticking a plaster over the wound rather than trying to figure out what the source is, right?
Exactly that. Yeah. And we've talked previously about working in golf, and the way the two parallel is quite interesting, because again, when you look at golf, the big question is your swing the way it is because the way the body moves, or is your body moving the way it moves because your swing thought process? And you've got the two in cycling. Are you?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Hang on. So let me just process that. So are you swinging because of your biomechanics, or is that your thought process? And I suppose that's the same as cycling, right? Is your cycling, because everyone, yeah, do you cycle the way you do because of your
You're,
biomechanics, or is that just how you've
or is your
learned how to cycle?
exactly have your biomechanics adapted to the way you want to cycle? So it's an interesting thought process to go through, and that's where in golf it has to be teamwork. So physiotherapy wise, from my perspective, I need the buy-in of the coach, or I need a joint approach with the coach. Yeah, and just with
Yeah.
cycling, it's actually, what I do may not fix things, but it may give you the opportunity to move in a different way. That if you then hone that different way, it starts to work better.
And, I think the currency that all cyclists talk in is that actually, by the sounds of that, if it allows you to move in a different way, there are going to be performance gains there.
Absolutely, and
So if you're not activating your glutes as much as you should be, that's a massive muscle not to be activating if you're a cyclist.
yeah, and if you going back to the original part of the question, which is what fault do I see the most? The fault I see the most is I'll be driving behind a cyclist who full lycras, looks like they know what they're doing, nice bike, knees going in and out on one side,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, if that knee's going in and out on one side, that leg is not working efficiently. And if it's not working efficiently, as you say, there is performance to be gained, because actually, if
You're
you
losing
can,
power.
yeah, you are losing power. And the same happens as in sprinters. I realize I'm going in tangents here. The same happens in sprinters when you look at them do a bullet start. And if you look at
Yeah.
the sprinters in a bullet start position, the guys who have their legs in a straight line are
Yeah.
faster than the guy who cocks his leg out to the side slightly.
It's that lateral movement. It's a
It's
waste
the
of
lateral,
energy, isn't it, really?
exactly that. So all of that
Yeah.
lateral movement on the bike is as if you're trying to push the pedal outwards and inwards rather than straight down.
Okay. So here's the question I've got. So I think anyone who rides in a group ride, there's someone within that. It's probably me, actually. I'm just not aware of it. But like, there'll be someone in your group that you've noticed, one leg slightly different or one leg comes out, right? And I think a lot of cyclists are a funny breed in the respect that they're all, and I suppose like golfers, I think maybe all of these sort of movements we're talking about develop people that are always sort of tinkering and fixing and also resigned to the things that will never be perfect. I think maybe people think, okay, they may know they have an issue and have just decided that, oh, I had that injury when I was younger, or that's an old rugby injury, or whatever. It will always be the case, and that's not true. Everyone, correct me if I'm wrong. Things can be improved for everyone, or what's your view on that?
So that is a good question. It would always be my view that you can improve the situation. Full stop. There are issues in the body. Let's say, for example, you've got a grossly arthritic hip. Okay,
Yeah.
then there's a limited amount of change you can do around that.
Yeah.
It is the shape and form of the body. You would probably be able to get a little bit of extra performance from it, but fundamentally, if it's not working anatomically well, and it's a structural issue, it's a structural issue.
But also to add to that, though, if you've got a chronically arthritic hip and your position's wrong as well, that's only going to make it worse, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you've got something we've seen many times, if you've got an old knee injury from football, okay, and people go, "Oh, it's my old knee injury from football," it's just the way it is. People are making the assumption that the limitation of movement is the old injury, and the open-mindedness of saying, "But what if that old injury is only part of it? What if the rest of the body has adapted to the old injury? That if you ask the rest of the body to move better, you can strengthen the old injury better, and actually you can work the area that you think is knackered to a better degree, then you are going to get performance gains. You're going to have a change in pains, problems, discomfort, and dysfunction." So I've seen many occasions where people have blamed an old knee injury, only to find that when you treat a different area of the body and give them a better understanding of a different area of the body, the what they used to get as the old knee injury disappears. And they're
Yeah.
like, that's strange. And as long as the knee injury hasn't created a real, an anatomically horrendously dysfunctional knee, then there's normally things that we gain from it. There's normally the fact that the body is just using the leg differently because that's what it's learned to do, and you're oblivious to it because up until this point in time, you've been able to achieve what you've needed to achieve.
So that's something for anyone listening, is to encourage you to be open-minded. So if you've got a historical niggle, or you've just sort of written it off as that's how your body is and you'll never be better, it might be worth going to get checked out and having a look at it and just being a little bit more open-minded in terms of potential opportunities or possibilities.
It's probably our favourite person that walks through the door that comes in and says, I've tried everything. And you're like, that's a red rag to a bull. You're like, yes, the juice of the goer in there, and you're like, here we go. Can we change it? And it's a combined journey. So, Jules, if you come into clinic, the journey is yours and mine, because I'm finding out about how you move, but at the same time, you're finding out about how you move as well. So it's actually a really exciting thing. It's for me, and maybe it shows my sadness, but it's really exciting that someone comes into our clinic space and they go out knowing a lot more about their body than they did when they came in.
Yeah, fascinating. That's really cool.
It's really exciting when you can see someone change in the clinic space, because if you can make a change in the clinic space, it opens the mind to the fact that it can change. So if someone thinks their hip can't move very well, but you then show them that it can, that's a really empowering moment. It's an empowering moment for you as the client, because you've suddenly seen change. My concept was wrong. I thought it was broken, and it's not. I thought I couldn't use it, and I can.
All my Googling was incorrect.
Dr. Google didn't nail it. And but people and people get information from different places. You just highlighted a brilliant Dr. Google. People go to the GP, and I feel for GPs, because they've got an average of 6 minutes per person who comes in, and you say to them, I have a problem with my hip. And they'll say, tell me about it. And you'll tell them about it in about 2 minutes. And they'll go, right, that sounds like a bursitis. Go take these anti-inflammatories, and I'll try and get you into the physios as soon as possible. It's normally a 6, 8, 10, 12-week wait before you see the physios. And then what happens is the physio gets a referral saying bursitis. Well, a physio, if they're not confident in themselves, or if they're not questioning it, goes, oh, that's a bursitis. In that case, I know how to treat a bursitis. This is how you treat a bursitis. But the GPs had 2 minutes to give you their opinion, and they're picking their best thought process around the information they've got.
And what you just described there, I take it, is the traditional physiotherapy path, which is what you're originally trained in, right? Then you're not, that type of physiotherapy isn't thinking about holistically the whole body, other things, or even, they're just taking what the doctor said and treating it.
Absolutely, yeah. And there are still people out there today that if I told you, Jules, that I think part of the reason that you've got a leg problem is because you've got a dysfunctional shoulder, that would scoff at me and call me various names, I'd imagine. But I know things. I know the way the body works, and the neural integration of the body, and the myofascial interconnections of the body. And I know I've still got so much more to learn, and that's what's exciting. I by far haven't nailed this. But I get passionate and excited about people coming in and being open-minded and saying, I just need to know what's going wrong. And you say, well, we've changed something here and it's affected elsewhere. Can you understand that? And the majority of people go, I can. And that's exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. So we've obviously mentioned people that may have sort of historic things, or just assume that they have barriers that they'll never be able to improve. What about people that just haven't considered there's anything wrong with them, or even off the bike? What should people listening, is there anything they can think of while listening now, just to check their movement or anything like that? Or would you encourage people to just, what would you say to those that just are listening and saying, I'm a perfect machine? There's nothing wrong with me.
I tell you, if they are a perfect machine, hats off to them. Chapeau.
Chapeau,
So
I'm jealous.
I've treated and seen various high level sports people, the elite, and
Yeah.
you can still make changes that benefit them.
Yeah.
And if you then look at the 1% rule, so talking Brailsford terms,
Yeah.
the tweaks that you can make to any system can gain you so much when you're looking at everybody's trying to do the same thing and achieve the same thing. So the simplest thing that so we look at screens of movement. So Jules, you've come into me and you say, I'm cycling and it hurts when I cycle. Well, the first thing I need to know is, how does your body move into in a vertical composite, a cycle position? How do you squat and move your arms forwards at the same time? So are you doing that symmetrically? Do you have the available movement, or are you doing some kind of rotation, some kind of weight shift, something that changes the position of the body from a straight line as you go into that position? And this is something that everyone could do in the mirror. You can drop a plumb line down the mirror. Get your feet equal width from the plumb line facing forwards. Pedal width is always good, of course, because if you know how wide your pedals are, stick your feet into that position and go get into a squat position. So half squat to 2/3 is quite nice. Arms coming forward as if you're reaching for handlebars. Do it in your underwear, right? And watch the body. Look, scrutinize it. Does it all move in the same direction? Or do you start to twist and do you start to talk?
Okay.
Yeah.
And if there's twisted talks there, they notice that. What should one do?
And here, that's the killer question, Jules, because it's
Everyone's different.
Everyone's different, and it's
Yeah.
why, And so when we talk to runners, we always say, look, there's always a runner's world, right, answer to this. There's always a cycling weekly answer to this. There's a magazine answer to everything, which makes gross assumptions about the person who's reading it. Now, if you look at a breakdown of certain things, you can look at the fact that if you then stand upright in that position and you turn your toes to point towards each other, as you turn your toes to point towards each other, is it the same ease of movement on both sides, and do you reach the same point? And what I'm looking at then is, how well does the hip turn inwards? And the same if you then bring your heels together and turn the toes outwards, they're pointing away from each other as far as possible, Charlie Chaplin style. Again, are they symmetrical? Do you have the same ease of movement? Do they go in the same distance? It's a gross screen of how well the hips turn inwards and outwards. And how well they turn inwards and outwards is a good thought process around, are they articulating in the right way the ball in the socket? Now, if you go, no, that feels pretty equal, I'm happy with that, then you can go, okay, well, if you lie down on the ground and you start to bring your knee up towards you, at what point does the pelvis start to move rather than just the thigh moving up towards you? So,
or for most cyclists, what point does the hip flexors start to grip?
Exactly. So when you come up into that position, you start to go, as my knee comes up to say 80 degrees, and you can put your hands on the front of the pelvis, the bony bits of the front, the ASIS areas of the pelvis. As you come up, when you start to feel that compensatory movement of the pelvis, is it before 90 degrees? Do you actually have 90 degrees of flexion at the hip? Which, if you're sitting on a bike and you're leaning forwards over the handlebars, it's a good idea to have 90 degrees of flexion on both sides. And again, is there an asymmetry? So I'm looking for asymmetries, particularly if you found a weight shift or a twist in that squat. Is there an asymmetry between the two sides? If there is an asymmetry between the two sides on either of those tests, a hip is working differently to the other hip. But again, it leads to the question as to why. And as part of the NHS, one of the amazing things I did was I went through a project management system, because they were trying to make things more efficient. And people came in, and it was this is how to make the processes of working the NHS more efficient. That didn't necessarily work, but that's not the point. And they taught me about the 5 whys of business. And the 5 whys of business are our bicycle sales have gone down. You go, why? Oh, maybe we haven't got the right stock. Why? That's 2 whys. Well, we broke our contract with that other person. Why? That's 3 whys. By the time you get to the 5th why, you're getting towards the root of a problem. So it's the same principle with the body. So there is a screening test, and it's a nice screening test to do. And people hopefully will try this at home and they'll go, that's interesting. I didn't know my right hip moved differently to my left hip. The why behind that is the more difficult area, because it's the hip being held in a position because there is something wrong with something wrong with the control of the musculature around it? Is it being held in that position because there's something wrong with the foot, and without holding the hip in that position, you'd have a bad foot? Or is it holding that position because the shoulder or the upper thorax is doing something funky from working too long at desks? And that's the breakdown pattern that we have to look at, which is which area do you want to affect to have the biggest and best outcome from your treatment?
Yeah, and if there's performance gains there, even if you've noticed some imbalances, how would one go about so what I'm trying to say is, like, physio's not always for when you're injured, is it? You can go for an MOT or just regularly. Do you see clients sort of regularly just to touch base and catch up and see how they're moving? Is that something that you do?
Absolutely. And that's because what you're looking at is a movement program, a schema. Back into my sports science days, you're looking at a motor pattern, and the motor pattern is variable. And again, that's where you get these seamless changes that you don't know you've changed the motor pattern. So actually getting a checkup is a great idea, because the key phrase that you learn, or that we've learned over a period of time, is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
so
of course.
If you, Jules, don't know that you've changed your motor pattern, then you genuinely don't know you've changed your motor pattern. It's not until you put someone in front of a mirror, show them how they're moving, that people go, I hadn't realized I'd been doing that. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, and it's not embarrassing. It's I know you haven't realized it, but I'm showing you from an objective point of view that it is happening. And this is how we're trying to change it. And it's, if you're slipping back into into your plan A, but we need to hone plan B.
Okay, that's cool. And obviously you've worked with various elite athletes during your time at the practice. Are you constantly working with them? I think you mentioned with golfers that's something important to do, but other athletes, you're constantly working with them during this this kind of thing, monitoring them sort of periodically, seeing how they're moving, and will that change throughout the year given where they're at with their season and stuff, if they're fatigued and stuff like that?
Yes, yes to all, I guess, is the answer.
Yes, I thought that would be the case.
And so because you look at the training, so it's about dovetailing as well. So you mentioned some really good points there. Number one is, am I working through the year? Yeah, absolutely, because I want to make sure that they are still aware of the movements that they want to achieve and how to achieve them. Number two is, there are different factors through the year as to what they're aiming for. So athletes will have a sort of a training strengthening zone, but when they start running, they're doing a lot less training and strengthening. They're doing a lot more technique. And so you're looking at the different aspects of, if you start training and start loading the system with weights, with exercises, are you achieving the outcomes of the movement that's being asked of you by cheating your body, or are you doing it and strengthening the pattern that you want to achieve?
So is that, with regards to some of the patterns you want to achieve, is it literally a case of taking the movement from subconscious and bringing it into the consciousness, into sort of conscious movement? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you actually want to consciously control that movement until it becomes subconscious.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
And people, this is not a new concept. That's muscle memory.
Of course.
So I remember learning in my A-level years a long time ago about mental rehearsal. And Steve Backley, back in the day, javelin thrower, trained for Olympics, did a lot of mental rehearsal because he was injured. And what he was doing was consciously going through the motor pattern, so that it was a motor pattern that became the norm. When we are assessing someone in clinic, I'm looking at a certain task, and the thing that does come out every now and again is, Jules, you come in, you say, Dave, I'm having pain when I cycle, and we go, okay, this is how you're moving, this is how we're going to change it. Yeah, we've affected that change. You know what you're doing at home. You're doing it. Yeah, you do most of the change. I just show you how to change. Right, you do it as the client. And it gets to the stage where you're cycling better, you've got no pain, and I'm there going, Jules, you're doing brilliant, this is fantastic. You go, yeah, but it still hurts when I run. And you go, but that wasn't the task.
Part of the, exactly. Something like that.
Yeah. And so you look at that and you go, if you're working towards cycling better and better and better, you need to be able to move, you need to understand the movement and what's happening within the movement and make that movement work better and better and better. But if someone else sets you a different task, you may well be able to achieve the task. And let's call it a deadlift just as a standard thing that a lot of people do in the gym. If someone
Yeah.
else says, oh, part of your training, I want you to deadlift. Well, if that deadlift takes you into a squat position that induces a twist, because it's a lower squat than you can achieve in your task,
Yeah.
then what you start doing is training a pattern that is not the pattern you want to achieve.
No.
So that's where you need to have the understanding of trainer, physio, coach all together, because you look at that and go, if the trainer is doing what they think is right and they're building your patterns into a deep squat, well, that's great as long as your deep squat is in the pattern that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So there are, I've chosen it as a straightforward one. There are multiple times when I'll see people and I'll say, if deadlift is part of your routine, you have to have the weight on blocks, because once you get to a certain depth of
What
squat,
is rotation. Yeah.
you start to twist. And if
Yeah.
you then fire up in that twisted position, that's training the muscles to work in a twisted position. And if you do that enough,
way, yeah.
all right. So, and this is where it comes back to that: is it the cycling causing the biomechanics, or the biomechanics causing the cycling? Well, we can put training in there as well. Is it the training causing the biomechanics, which affects the cycling? Everything affects each other, right? The body is a fluid being, and what you ask of it, it achieves, but it's whether you're achieving it in the right way. Which comes to my second gimmick phrase, which is you are what you do every day. So, George, if you sit at your desk for 9 hours a day, your body works out how to do that really well. And that's not necessarily conducive to cycling up a hill.
Yeah.
And that's to say, if you decide you're going to train in a different way and you go, I'm going to go and bulk up, I'm going to go throw big weights around, I'm going to, old school Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy it, and you go, okay, well, that's all right. But when you're lifting those big weights or moving the big weights, how is the whole body doing that? Because if you're achieving it by a minor twist or a slight weight shift to one side, you need to know you're doing that, and you need to know that challenge was too great for you, because otherwise it will go into the bike pattern, right? Your body will learn that twist, it will learn that weight shift. And then all of a sudden,
is that why they've moved away? You mentioned Rory and Tiger there on the golf side. Obviously, they got very big around 09, 010, 011, 012 probably, and then they've kind of shrunk again. Is that they realised that they were being detrimental to their swing, not strengthening it?
And so I can't talk of them, but certainly there was a movement in golf that then did come back away from just building raw strength and going back to actual movement. But funnily enough, it's going to shift again, because DeChambeau has just put on a whole load of bulk and he's smashing the ball 350 yards on the carry and he's winning tournaments. So
it's like a phase. But actually, the weight training bit, I know what you're going to say. It depends. Obviously, the movement is key in terms of making sure if you're working in the gym, you're executing with proper form and correctly. But for cyclists, and you talk about if you're sat at your desk for hours at end, you're going to potentially create postural problems. The same, I suppose, for cyclists if they're doing 10, 15, 20 hours on the bike in a pretty unnatural position, they may cause postural issues for them. What are your views around the importance of general conditioning work, not just for cyclists, but anyone really? Are you a big advocate of that?
I very much so. Big fan. Big fan of all aspects of it, not least the stress release of it and the endorphin release of it. Posturally, like as we've said earlier on, it's not about creating the best posture. It's about creating options around posture. So moving in different directions and strengthening in different directions is a great thing for the body to do, so that you have the option of controlled flexibility in different directions. So you'd look at the major problem of sitting for long periods of time, cycling for long periods of time, is you are holding effectively a static posture, and your body learns how to hold that posture really, really well. Well, you still need to be able to move away from that posture. You need to be able to stand in the pedals and dance. You need to be able to explode, and that explosion doesn't come from a rounded shouldered posture. That comes from an alignment position that you can then put force through the pedal. And general conditioning helps this, because it keeps the joints and the body moving in all different directions, so that it doesn't just hone its mechanical efficiency into one position, because that position yes, you use it a lot of the time, but actually you still need to come away from that position, during a ride and during everyday life. So therefore,
Yeah.
make sure you're combining lots of different directions and movements in your training in order to make sure that you're not, creating a bad, a detrimental position and a detrimental motor pattern that will actually hone over a period of time and be more detrimental to you than you would like it to be.
Or a ticking time bomb for injury, I suppose. It just makes you, a more efficient machine all around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to sort of segue slightly, and something I've seen with you previously is to ask you about cranial. I know that your approach is quite holistic and you're embracing a number of different views and stuff. But what is cranial? How does it work? And it is effective. You're a big believer in it, aren't you?
That's a great question to ask someone who doesn't know a great deal about it and is learning about it all the time. But absolutely, the way the effect you can have by feeling the tensions through a skull, as I learn more and more and more, is quite incredible. The body is a whole being. It literally goes from the crown of your head to the bottom of your feet,
Yeah,
and you can feel tensions. And what's interesting when you put your hands onto somebody's head is there's a leap of faith for that person, because I've now got my hands on your head. Right, a head is a sensitive area. So
yeah.
once you
Quite in,
once
quite in,
you relax into the idea that I'm now holding your head, you can
yeah,
feel idiosyncrasies of where tensions are, and those tensions will run down through the body. They'll run in different directions, and as you change those, I mean, effectively, the head and the brain is the nerve center of the computer. So
yeah.
if you have got tensions and torques and pressures around the skull, it will have an effect on the neural networks coming from the brain and going down the spinal cord.
So when you're doing cranial, is that releasing the tension, or you're just observing the tension?
So that depends on whose cranial philosophy you go for. So there are different
Okay.
ways of approaching the cranium. From my perspective, what I'm looking at is what direction is the skull being pulled, and if I feel that
Oh,
tension and we're
yeah,
both aware of the tension, and I can bring
yeah,
the awareness to the tension, and between us we can relax that tension,
yeah,
does it have the positive effect on the rest of the body that we want it to? And the majority of the time that you feel someone's cranial tension, it does. But you have to bear in mind that, again, it comes to this domino knock-on effect of the body. If the primary area of your body that isn't working properly is elsewhere,
yeah.
the tension on the cranium will be a compensatory tension. So you
Because
would
of the
then, be aware
tight
of
ankle or something like that. Yeah,
absolutely. And so you may have a right hip that is causing an issue. And what your body's done is it's tensioned different areas up and down the chain. And people certainly are aware of fascial chains more and more nowadays, and whether it's a posterior chain, anterior chain, spirals, etc. That the way the body interconnects it, if your body has created these long guy ropes to help support an area that isn't working properly, you can basically treat that guy rope all day long. You could try and unwind a cranium and try and relax it, treatment after treatment after treatment. You might feel momentarily better, but it comes back, and it comes back quickly. And
it's
certainly
about
that's
getting to the root cause again, I suppose.
precisely, and
Yeah,
that's where people who would be against against MOTs and the fact that you have to keep on seeing people, there will be a philosophy that what you're doing is over treating someone or creating a dependence on seeing the physiotherapist.
yeah,
And the way you'd look at it is say, well, if the body is fluid and it keeps on changing, if you're treating something and it's the root cause, the likelihood is the body has been doing it for a long period of time and it's its plan A and it keeps going back to doing that.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you've seen someone and they treat something and it makes you feel better, but it comes back pretty quickly, it's possibly not the right area to be treating. And what
No,
you're
it's not
probably doing is taking a pressure away from a compensation, but the underlying problem's still there.
okay.
So
Interesting.
there is an element of finance reward in the fact that I say, oh, Jules, when I put an acupuncture needle into your shoulder, it got better for
Yeah,
2 days. So why don't you come back every 3 days and let's do that? And
yeah. That's the one.
oh look,
Yeah,
I've made some money out of that. You feel better for a short period of time, isn't that wonderful? But to
yeah.
me, that wouldn't address the root cause of the problem.
Okay, interesting. No, I was particularly interested about the cranial thing because I was wondering if there are pressures there that could be released. What about cyclists and bike helmets? Could that be creating pressures in the cranium that are causing tensions further down the chain, maybe?
That is a good question.
Maybe
I,
something to be studied, maybe.
Yeah, right. I think it'll be something really fun to look into.
Yeah.
I can tell you that falls and mild concussions will certainly have an effect. So if you've ever fallen and
Really?
broken a helmet, if you've had enough force to break the helmet, there's probably enough force to create a tension around the skull. But the
Interesting.
actual helmet itself, if it's pressing onto an area that already has tension, absolutely it would probably irritate that area, or wind that area up more and more and more.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mm,
Oh, that's worth maybe looking into. We'll have a look at that.
yeah,
So, well, I must wrap up soon. I've got some more questions to ask you actually, but firstly, for everyone that's been listening and either has a niggle or an injury or has done that self-assessment you mentioned and has noticed some imbalances, or they're just keen to come to physio for an MOT. Obviously, firstly, tell us a little bit about your chain of businesses and how they can locate you. And if they're further afield, how either you might better help them, or if not, how they can go about finding the right physio that embraces this philosophy, and what questions they should be asking to make sure they're finding the right physio.
cool. That's a lot of questions in one,
We'll
Jules.
start with you. Tell us about your business and where you are in the world and what you guys are doing, and
So,
then we'll go further afield.
right, so we're based in Surrey. We're the spur in central London as well. So we have clinics in Walton-on-Thames, Guildford, Worcester Park, and up in central London. Although naturally at this moment in time there's a limited opening availability.
Yeah.
So I think it was one of those classics of I grew up in Surrey. I then went around. I studied in Birmingham. I studied in Edinburgh. I went overseas and played sports. I did a ski season in Switzerland, as you do.
Yeah.
Still came back to home and to the area that I knew best. Brilliantly, that's probably where my specialism in golf came from to begin with, because most of Surrey is a golf course. But
You've got some cracking golf courses around here as well, right?
yeah, but also it's where my love of cycling flared up as well, because actually, there's such the cycling world has just increased so much. There's so many clubs and engagements and social cafes that you just go, this is brilliant. And I started my cycling journey when I was up in Edinburgh, and my friend lent me a road bike, and I haven't looked back since. So that's where we're based, and our practitioners, we have physios and osteopaths, and obviously you and I have talked before about the difference between different therapists, and the difficulty around that question is the fact that people learn in different ways and then people develop in different ways. So one physio is not the same as another physio, one osteo is not the same as another osteo. So we're proud to have an osteopath on board, and it's interesting that we've learned a lot from osteos as they've learned a lot from us. So we almost amalgamate the skills to a point. Then what are the questions you need to think about when you see a physio?
So what we can do, in the show notes, what we'll do, we'll put your contact details, or Body Mechanics contact details in here. So if anyone is in the London area that wants to get an appointment to come and see either yourself or one of the team, we can they can look to do that. Obviously, you do Zoom consultations as well, which I can testify are very effective. But if someone's, I don't know, we've got listeners all around the world. If someone wants to go see a physio in, I don't know, Hong Kong or Chile or wherever they're listening, what questions should they be asking in terms of how do they find a physio with a similar kind of philosophy if they're very interested in what you've discussed today?
Cool. So the first place to start would be Diane Lee's website. So she's the Canadian physio who helped me on my journey, and
We'll get that in the show notes as well.
In the show notes, yeah. So she has a directory of everyone who has been taught the framework of assessment that I've been taught. They haven't necessarily had my background, but at least they're going to be thinking in that open-minded way, which is useful. The big questions you ask of a physio are, can the rest of the body, can the body really, interconnect, and can we work out how it's interconnecting and what the effect is? And if you get someone who says no, an old shoulder injury can't have any effect on a knee, then I would be wondering whether that thought process was correct or not, because the body adapts so much to every aspect of what happens to it. Then someone who flat out refuses to believe that, you would say, okay, well, thank you, but if I do want a full body, a holistic assessment, I want someone who can show me how the body interconnects, show me how it feels that the body interconnects, and that can come from a chiro, an osteo, a physio, any practice, a sports therapist, soft tissue therapists, and this is where it comes down to the title is one of those things that people will say, I saw an osteo before and he was rubbish. Well, you go, well, that you can't tar everyone with the same brush. You just got to work out when you start speaking to someone, the questions you're asking them are, can you interlink my whole body and show me that I can move better by looking at the whole thing.
And it's, to your point, it's actually not irrelevant what they originally studied, but I think that the better therapists are the ones that, because it's a process of continued learning, as you said, but so many go on courses. And I saw an amazing massage therapist in Hong Kong who has worked with the South African rugby team and cricket team, and he was continually on courses and just wanting to learn how things work and taking more of that holistic approach as well. So I think that's kind of key, isn't it?
Absolutely, and the title is kind of irrelevant, and you look at it and say, and hence the title of the company, we're mechanics of the body. And I've learned from osteopaths, I've learned from chiros, I've learned from sports massage therapists, I've learned from and I will I openly pass my knowledge on to anyone who'll listen about it, because sharing knowledge and sharing experience is the only way you learn how to make things, make yourself better, other people better. And the more open-minded you are around that, I think the further you're going to go in life. And as I say, I don't profess to having all the answers, far from it. I profess to keep on learning to have more answers, but not all of the answers. But if you often find that people, as you ask the questions of how does the body interconnect, and how's my hip moving? Is that a problem? What's going on? If you ask the questions about the different area of your body, you either get engagement or disengagement from a therapist or from a practitioner. Well, that often sums up the answer as to how holistic they are in their approach.
Very good. Dave, thank you so much for taking your time. It's been a fascinating conversation. I've got a few quick fire questions to ask you, or just to get your views on a few things. So that would be, very quickly, if you're okay to answer them.
Yeah, go for it.
Yoga, Pilates, foam rollers, and massage guns.
Brilliant. Okay. Do we take them one by one?
Yep, go for it.
So there are multiple people in my time that I have referred to yoga as a therapy. There are multiple people that I referred to Pilates as a therapy. You look at those two practices, again, comes down to you get good practicers or good teachers, not such good teachers. You get the ones that go basically by the basic rules of what they've been taught, and ones that are so interested in how the body moves, they've adapted what they're doing, and they work with you to make sure that you get the movements from them.
Yes.
I quite like people doing both. It's a good plan. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you exactly which ones were best. But
no, I just wondered if it was you're sort of keen on it. And obviously there's a movement element. You talked about the importance of just having that range of movement with Pilates and yoga, but also from a stress and sleep element, we spoke offline just how important that is in regards to body mechanics, right? It can really affect how your body moves, your stress management, and also sleep as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Stress, anxiety, worry, they're really good at manifesting in the body in the same way that there are visceral elements in the body that are important at the same time, where if you stress, worry, you feel it in your stomach. Well, actually, if you're having issues around the stomach, if you're having issues around digestive system, that creates an internal torsion that, again, you could be finding that you're having a back pain and can't get rid of it, but actually it's nothing to do with the back. It's everything to do with your internal systems.
Wow. Okay.
So stress, anxiety, worries, and sleep. I'm going to bracket that in the same area, in the fact that anyone who's a parent knows sleep deprivation and embraces it, I'm sure. So you look at the sleep for a body is so important to recharge. It's so important to reset the mind. It's important that the body gets that moment of that relaxation in order to perfuse the muscle, flush out all the toxins of the body. And interestingly, from that perspective, when you have an inflammatory pain, it's always worse in the morning. And there's the thought process.
Always worse in the morning?
Always worse.
Sorry,
in the morning.
was that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it tends to be, So it's quite an interest. So people go, it hurts when I do something repetitively. I go to bed, feels all right. I wake up in the morning and it's painful. And you're like, well, that often your body's processed all these chemicals and inflammatories and stirred them all up. And then actually, as you move around and your blood flow goes up again and flushes it all out,
Dilutes it a bit. Yeah.
dilutes it. Yeah.
Yeah. And hydration is probably key then as well with regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And treating the body as a unit, hydration, nutrition, all very
Yeah.
important elements of the being. And so to bring it all the way back around to the start and learning within an integrated systems model and opening my eyes is you're looking at the fact that you're taught about that sort of the joint level and the muscle level of the body, but you have to take in the emotion of the body. The person who walks into my clinic room, it's a journey we both go on. So you have to understand the way they feel about things, or ask them how they feel about things, empathize with how people feel about things. You have to understand or listen to whether they are stressed. Are there external elements that are outside of my control that will make my job more difficult, because it will have a negative effect on movement that has nothing to do with the testing of a joint or a muscle. There are the visceral elements, as we say, that cause torsions. That you could have a pleurisy, a chest infection that irritates the lung tissue, which then creates a tension around the rib cage in a certain area. And you can keep on trying to relax the rib cage, but it's not working because underneath it, there's still an active infection that won't let you move the area, because moving the area moving the lungs and getting the lungs mobile hurts. So that's how integrated the body is, and how we, in my humble opinion, how we should all be looking at it, not just as a set of levers and pulleys that all have to work together. Well, the levers and pulleys are important, but the effect of everything else on the body cannot be ignored in any therapy, because they have such a gross effect on the body. Parenthood, sleep deprivation, change of diet, digestive issues, heart problems, lung problems. Yeah, you can keep on going. They all will have some kind of manifestation on how the body works.
It's amazing. We should probably wrap it up now, but I reckon there was so much more to delve into, isn't there? But
I will tack on the end, because you asked the two things I've just completely gone off on a mini tangent. Foam rollers, massage guns. Yeah, foam rollers, spiky balls, so soft tissue manipulators, massage guns. The soft tissues get overactive and get tight. So they get and what you tend to find is people talk about trigger points. They talk about tensions in muscles, and it's where the muscle is contracting at a certain level and has forgotten how to relax, or the brain doesn't want to relax it because it's doing it for a purpose, or it thinks it's doing it for
compensating for something, maybe.
So it's either compensating for something, or it was compensating for something. It doesn't need to anymore, but the brain hasn't worked. The brain's moved on from that point. So it's just worked out, if I keep on contracting it, no harm's going to come.
So foam rolling and guns are good for releasing that tension.
They're good for releasing the tension, but they should be prioritized in the key areas. And that's where it comes back to the difficulty of analysing the key area, because often where you get a pain isn't where the root of the problem is.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I've got another question now.
Go on.
What about scraping? Is it the fascia?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that? What are your views on that? Is that
again? If you're using it in the right areas, it's a great treatment adjunct. So scraping, myofascial release, rolfing, spiky balls, acupressure mats, dry needling, acupuncture. All of these things aren't off the table. All of these things can be beneficial if it suits you as the individual and you're targeting the right area. Whichever one works is fantastic. But just because it helped your friend doesn't mean it'll help you. Yeah. And you can have positive effects from it, negative effects from it. But the biggest key element is anyone who is just foam rolling top to toe because they think that's a good idea, you're probably going to release the right area or relax the right area to a degree, but you're also going to relax the compensatory areas that have been set up to help protect the area that isn't working properly. So targeted input of soft tissue work, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Good. I think that's a good spot to finish. Otherwise, we'll be talking all evening. But certainly, physio or your philosophy to physio has come a long way to plug you into the ultrasound for 20 minutes and with the gel on and then walk off again. But Dave, thank you so much.
Genuinely, I remember as a 14-year-old boy having electrodes hooked onto my knee and sitting there for 15 minutes. and thinking,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this is doing. Now,
Oh, exactly. Or the old
not,
tensing machine.
yeah, again, it's not to say it's ineffective. It's just, there are lots of different ways to look at the body. The way that we look at it is one way, but incorporates a lot of stuff. But as you probably heard in the talk, I get very excited about it. And as you say, George, it's time to wrap this up, or I'm waffling.
Well, we'd love to get you back on if that's okay. I mean, first and foremost, if anyone wants to get in touch with Dave, all his details are in the show notes, and we'll get loads of information in the show notes for you as well. But we'd love to get you back on. Maybe we'll get you on with Dougie as well from Edinburgh Bike Fitting, and we could talk a little bit about evolving bike fitting, or there's lots of different things.
Definitely. I love the idea, and just because it'd be a learning thing for me as well. So I'm always open for that sort of thing. Love it. Collaborations, fantastic.
Superb. Let's do that. Brilliant. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Brilliant conversation. And we look forward to stay in touch when you, and we look forward to catching up soon.
Definitely. Pleasure to speak. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
All the best.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And more importantly, don't forget to download the Unfound app and join cyclists from around the world on the hub. We'll see you on there.